Welcome back, everyone. Cutting up to our semifinals here, we have Charles Dunn versus Andrew Rudin up next on the camera. One playing Rhinar, the other playing Dorinthea. Great axe build, so this will be a bit of a grind, a classic battle, if you will. I'm not the first to make that joke, but I got to say it on camera.
And we're all better for it.
Yeah, so yeah, if we have our top 8 graphic, we can see who's still left in the tournament. Maybe we'll switch over to that. Chris Ioli against Eric Dauernheim on Kano. Not a great matchup for the Kasai. Of course, everybody here is rooting for Chris. We hate Kano. We love Chris. We're hoping he can make it through. But it's not looking good from what I've heard from both people. It's going to be a very difficult matchup for Chris. And the match we'll be watching, Andrew Rudin on Rhinar Reckless Rampage versus... That's not right, Anthony. It should be Charles Dunn. Yeah, it's all right. A little mistake. Charles Dunn made it through. Anthony got kicked out. Anthony Blam.
Yeah, he is no longer allowed in the store, in fact. We've kicked him straight to the curb.
Yeah.
He'll be spending the night
of that face.
on the street.
So coming up on our screen shortly, we'll have Charles Dunn versus Andrew Rudin. And both of these decks are a little bit on the grindier side, so we're going to see a good old-fashioned slugfest with some D-reacts and some axe swings, reducing the value of all those blocks.
Yeah, absolutely. Charles is definitely looking for this game to go a little bit longer, right?
Absolutely.
Andrew is generally pretty okay with that game plan into most other matchups. Now, Andrew has something very important in his back pocket, and that is a little keyword called Intimidate.
True.
What does Intimidate do?
It scares the cards right out of your hand. You can't block with them. You have to sit there in the banish zone.
And that can be kind of a problem for Charles Dunn,
Yeah.
who is the fatigue master
True.
of Southern California.
If I recall in the past, Rhinar was a popular pick into Oldham for that reason. Am I right about that? Kind of stripping all the defensive cards out of their hands so that they couldn't block you out and just forcing the damage through. And we see Andrew Rudin here bringing the claws in, probably going to be on the aggressive end of this match with Dorinthea using that great axe, hoping to stall the game out long enough to just get that grindy value.
He definitely knows that he is going to have to bring the damage against the Dunster.
Yep.
Let's see, though. Andrew is running Blood Rushes in his deck. Our other teammate, Jonah Overholt, his list today brought 0 Blood Rushes and clearly worked out for him because he did end up in top 8.
Yep.
But maybe that was the difference that got Andrew there.
Yeah.
We'll have to find out later.
Yeah.
But here we go, looking like a pretty traditional Rhinar build nowadays with claws and the Blood Rush.
Yep.
He's going to be looking to go big. I wonder how many cards each of these players brought into this matchup.
That is an interesting question. I imagine maybe a lot from Andrew if he wants to avoid being fatigued. He might have just piled everything in, just every piece of value that he can fit in that deck so that he makes sure that he's got enough gas in the tank to push that number 40 down to 0.
Interestingly enough, Andrew being the higher seed elected for Charles to go first, which is kind of interesting because a lot of the times Rhinars can run away with turn 0 because they can intimidate several cards out of your hand and then swing for something big. Maybe that means he's just trying to find... like he's taking more of an aggro approach to this matchup.
Yep, preferring the tempo, perhaps.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Andrew having a quick look at what Charles Dunn's weapon says.
Huh.
Why don't you tell him?
So the Great Axe is a 3-cost weapon. It comes in for 4, and it says the first time it is blocked each turn, you can choose a blocking card and reduce its defense by half, rounded up. So usually that's just -1 on a 3-block, but if they happen to try to throw a Sink Below or a Fate Foreseen or another defensive reaction, sometimes it can get 2 value.
Interesting.
And here we see
Andrew throwing a Blood Rush into the pitch zone in favor of a swing big. That, to me, telegraphs the fact that Andrew is very well aware that this game is going to go long, and he is using this opportunity, one, to play that pummel in his hand.
Yes.
I like how he looked at the camera right when I said that.
I also think that maybe he has another Blood Rush in his hand. I think I saw that flashed on the screen there. So
I think you're quite right.
Could be a forced pitch as well. We'll have to see if he opts to pummel this and send 2 Blood Rushes together, which might actually be a liability if they show up in the late game versus just one, which could be a great boon on its own.
Too right you are. But definitely an opportunity for Andrew to start making a really nice pitch stack because this game is definitely going.
We see lots of D-reacts in his hand. Whoops, dropping a card on the table. Putting it on the bottom.
So Charles has a Steel Blade Shunt in his hand. Typically, this is a card that you want to wait for and see once you've got your Tunic at 3 counters, right? Because then it goes from a 2-card 6 value to a 1-card 6 value, which just basically breaks the tenets of the game. Right you are. Andrew is holding on to that pummel, instead being afraid of the 2 blood.
Oh no, there's another blood rush. That's not what he wants to see. You see Andrew reacting with a little sigh, hopefully not giving too much information over to Charles there, but not what he wants to see. This is too early for the blood rushes and too close together, as discarding one will effectively end the ability for the other two.
Furthermore, his blue card for the turn is not a 6 power, so he is probably going to be forced to block with one of these blood rushes.
Yeah, a very bad.
Just so the other one does not discard a non-6.
And like we said earlier, I think he would also prefer not to pitch it. You don't want to put 2 together for the late game. So that's all 3 copies. One just blocked with not a great start for Andrew.
No, definitely not what you want to be seeing as the brute player. These blood rushes just feel so critical, especially when you're facing off with Charles Dunn, who you know is going to try to take you to the bitter end. Let's see if Andrew can put together a couple Intimidates, though, and eke through the damage that he needs.
He did grab a Fate Foreseen, so that's a great Intimidate target. And then we see...
We've got a blue, which is good.
Yeah.
And what's that other card? Send Packing?
Yeah.
Send Packing.
So this is potentially a great pommel target. I think he's still floating too. So 8, not the kind of value you want out of your Intimidate, but with a pommel on the back end, this is potentially some good value.
Critically too, Charles is once again still not on his Tunic is still not completely powered up, and he drew into another Shunt. So he's going to have to make some difficult decisions here. And this is also kind of not what he wants to be seeing. Charles needs to be eking every single point of defensive value out of every one of his cards if he is going to make it to the end, especially with these massive Intimidate turns coming out of Andrew at some point in this game.
Yeah, just looking at the hand and maybe thinking about giving some armor here to cover it up all the way. Reaches for the Refraction Bolters.
Definitely
3 block.
He definitely wants to get value off of those Refraction Bolters early rather than later, because eventually he'll be able to set up a 2-axe swing turn.
Moves to reactions and does the Shunt. No cards in hand, so that pommel is just 4 damage.
But critically, it is still removing a card from his hand, essentially, because the Fate Foreseen was banished and will remain in banish because Send Packing has hit.
Yep.
So Andrew's still getting extra value off of that pommel.
Pitch in the blue, coming in with the axe. This is what Dorinthea likes to do.
Indeed so. We're going to see a lot of this game, folks. Andrew back in the tank, seeing what he can figure out here. Ugh. Sorry, that is a miserable hand we have. We have 2 Beast Withins, which are cards that you never want to play. You always want to discard. And then a Ripple Away, which is doing nothing here, and a Wreck a Rump, which is pretty much unplayable.
Andrew's looking disappointed with the start of this game, the way he's drawn up so far.
It is interesting, though. I think there was a line where he technically could have gone Claw, discard, Ripple Away, Claw. That being said, this is probably the more efficient way to get to 6. Just play a Beast Within.
Yep.
The unfortunate bit about this, though, is that he is forced to Arsenal a Beast Within.
Yeah.
Which, if you don't want to play a card, the place you don't want it to be is in your arsenal.
Exactly. Yeah, so far some very clunky hands from Andrew. Playing right into Charles Dunn's plan of not taking a lot of damage and swinging back for 4.
Andrew back in the tank once again. Sporting a new card from Heavy Hitters, Talk a Big Game, which is going to get 3 value here. In the form of a blocking card. Andrew, a little bit blue locked once again, it seems. That is his third blue that was in his hand, sending that reckless swing. I think Andrew is just trying to navigate these clunky hands as best as he can, get value on the blocking side of things because he knows he's not going to have an explosive offensive turn, and just fix his hands until he can find the nuts.
Yep.
But Charles, that's his game. He's more than happy to do this. Here comes an E-strike.
For 7.
Indeed so.
Putting that D-react on the bottom. A little gas for late game.
Earlier on in the cast, we talked about point goblin decks. These decks that are just trying to eke every last little bit of value mathematically out of each of their cards. This Dorinthea deck is no exception. Most of the time, they are trying to get it on defensive cards, namely the Shunts, the Fates, the Sinks. In this case, good old E-Strike, which is 2-card, basically 1 card out of your deck, if fatigue is what you're concerned about, for 7 is just not bad.
Yeah. Asking for 2 cards in exchange for 1. That's a good trade. And there's the third beast within. Andrew just seeing all these cards out of order.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if he didn't do a big enough shuffle after those deck checks.
Yeah,
that's one of those kryptonite things about top 8.
Sure. We got the swing big coming in, 1 floating resource. This is coming in for 8, and if it is fully covered, it will give Charles Dunn a quicken token. So the good news is he's going to get a lot of cards in exchange for this, right? 1 card for 2 to 3.
Ooh, but looks like Charles can't supply it because he's got 2 Sigil of Solaces in hand.
Oh, wow. So he may not be able to get that quicken token after all.
That being said, he is sporting Standing Order,
True.
which is a card that probably makes these fatigue decks a little bit more streamlined because if you've got a card stuck in your arsenal, you can always block with the Standing Order, cycle it out, get block value out of it that way, which might be just enough to cover up this swing big.
Yep. 5 plus 3 is 8, and then he can double Sigil pass and just sit on that quicken token. But the sink below, even more efficient. Opting not to get that additional quicken.
Probably because he knows that he is going to swing the Great Axe here. And if he has the quicken token, he's not going to be able to swing it again.
Swinging it, and I think likely playing 1 Sigil, arsenaling the other one, so that he could play around Send Packing or a Command and Conquer in the future.
And Charles then pitching one of the namesake fatigue cards, Last Ditch Effort.
I love that card. Never really been able to see it go off, but the concept is very cool. It's a 3-cost 4 attack that when you have no cards in deck becomes a 8 power go again for 3. Very powerful in the late game.
Pretty insane if you intend to get to the dregs of the match. One thing we also saw very early on in the game that I want to harken back to is the fact that Charles Dunn had his Heart of Fiendal in his hand on turn 0. That's one of those pieces that is going to incrementally gain him value over the course of the game. But on his first cycle, because he had to pitch it turn 0, doesn't gain a life off of it. So there are certain things that are going right for Charles. There are certain things that are going right for Andrew. But it's kind of neither player is really like everything is lining up for him at the moment.
So Andrew discarding his agile windup on his turn to create an agility, but more importantly, intimidate a card.
And that card was Oasis Respite, which is the exact card you want to see when you have a powered up Tunic.
Yep, and there's the Command and Conquer. So Charles pretty happy to have the Sigil in Arsenal as he looks at it.
And that's one of the reasons why you do something like that. Why you put a Sigil of Solace in Arsenal, even though it's an instant and you know you could just gain your 3 life when you can. You do it to bait things out from your opponent, especially opponents that run a lot of Arsenal disruption like Rhinar Reckless Rampage.
Absolutely. So really good play there from Charles, not just slamming both Sigils, but rather saving one for an opportunity to bait. He's thinking about whether he wants to block this. He has 2 defense reactions in hand, I believe.
I think it's one. I think it's a Fate Foreseen. He's got an E-Strike and Overpower. So the reason he's not just snap blocking this is because if he does, then his turn is kind of going to do nothing, right? He has Oasis Respite, Intimidate it out of his hand. If he doesn't find a way to use that Fate Foreseen, which he can't against a Command and Conquer, then he's basically IP1ing himself.
Right.
Because it'll be blue swing axe, then...
There's the pummel, so...
Yep.
Maybe he was also thinking about playing around that pummel, deciding to keep a card that he can discard in order to still have a turn.
Quite possibly.
But it's a lot of damage, 10 damage taken.
And that was a really good point for Andrew to have the pummel because there's a D-React in hand. And Charles has to make difficult decisions.
Yep.
So Charles finding the right line in terms of discarding the blue because he'll be able to go E-Strike for 7, Arsenal that Oasis.
Absolutely. Coming in just like you said. 7 damage.
Once again, 1 card out of his deck for 7 damage.
Yep. I wonder if there was a thought there about taking some damage just to eke a little bit more value out of the Oasis. Although Andrew will likely take some damage here, so maybe he isn't thinking that far ahead.
Yeah, let's see. We've got a pack hunt, I see. 2 pack hunts? Yeah, 2 pack hunts. A Wrecker Romp. So Andrew, and Andrew is still sporting an agility token. So this is pretty sweet. He's going to get
taken a lot of damage in order to send all that back. All the Intimidate that's about to come is a little dangerous for Charles. Luckily for him, he has arsenaled an instant that will allow him to absorb some of this. Pack Hunt, 6 damage, Intimidate, go again. So asking for Charles to banish a random card.
Do we know what is in Andrew's arsenal?
Ooh, I don't know if I saw that. He plays the Oasis from hand using that Tunic. Just getting it out so that it doesn't get intimidated before he loses the opportunity.
Oh, he had one in his hand as well?
He had one in his hand as well, yeah.
And critically, so it's an interesting spot to be in Andrew's case. He is no stranger to these long matchups. The same thing about losing value on Charles's Heart of Fiendal at the beginning of the turn. Because Andrew took a ton of damage, he is making him intrinsically lose value on each of these Oasis respites.
Yep.
Right? Charles would much rather be like one health below Andrew at all times. This is exactly what we were hoping for. The barraging beatdown out of Arsenal. This will intimidate another card out of Charles' hand, which means that this barraging beatdown is getting the buff and cannot be debuffed because Charles doesn't have any cards in hand to block with.
Wow.
This is the power of Rhinar into these fatigue strategies.
So it looks like he really has options outside of Blood Rush Bellows to push damage. Oh, when did that become a Fate Foreseen?
Yeah, that's a good point.
He
must have bottomed the Oasis.
Okay, yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yep. So good call. Probably, with the Tunic counter up, it's not useful to have 2 Oases. So Charles Dunn, a better player than I.
Yeah, no doubt. Really smart of him to know that he was going to draw into another Oasis. Man, I wish I could be as good as he is at this game.
Playing around possible hands is certainly a skill that you acquire playing Flesh and Blood.
It's probably like he's probably sporting so many shunts and Oases. Yep. He's probably like, I just know I'm going to get these clunked up at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So coming in with the Axe for 4, being able to stop 4 of that damage is actually pretty big. 10 is a lot to take when you're trying to make it to the end of the game.
Friend of the show, Sam O'Byrne, chiming in to say, oh, good.
We
get our monthly shot of Sleepy Top 8 Connor. Poor Connor is so sleepy. Oh, my God, he's going to go.
Connor.
Oh, Christine, enhance. Oh, we don't have that button. Sorry. Yeah, I think he's really going this time.
Uh-huh.
Poor guy. It's been such a long day. He's so tuckered out. I'm going to take him rock climbing tomorrow.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, I think so.
Wish I could join you.
I know.
Mother's Day. Wrong day to plan a big rock climbing.
Yeah, that's why you got to get rid of your mother, folks.
Oh, geez. Heard it here first. Oh, and we've got to dig up dinner. So Andrew Rudin saying I can play on the healing life axis as well. Shuffling up that graveyard, hoping for 3 attack actions with power 6 or greater in order to gain the maximum value out of this. And Charles just takes a big chunk out of the middle, and it's 2. So he will heal 2 and return 2 to his deck.
Indeed.
Pack Hunt's a great hit. Swing Big also. Oh, I'm sorry. Alpha Rampage.
Massive hit.
Both are very, very good hits for Andrew. He needs that gas in order to push over. Both of those are Intimidate cards, so that can help him push through. And a shuffle might be helpful given the way he'd been drawing earlier.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that we didn't see him kind of shrug off the fact that he would have had to pitch those two Blood Rushes together, right? Because you've got cards like Dig Up Dinner that basically make your second cycle not matter.
No problem. And he comes in with a Mandible Claw for 3.
A gentlemanly 3. Andrew probably knows that he doesn't need to have his foot on the gas at all times, right? Because there are certain hands that Charles is going to have, like that one, where he has to lose value on some of his cards just because his cards don't really do anything offensively. Yeah,
I guess 4 if you count the damage. But coming in for 7 now. The Great Axe does have some offensive potential.
Oh, you guys, he's going.
He's zooming.
Justin,
Sonic the Hedgehog,
get this guy an espresso shot or something. He's dying out there. Oh, no, he's got a second win. Here we go.
All right, back to the game. We've got Andrew thinking about how he wants to block this out.
Wait, Sleepy Connor is not the game?
Knowing that this axe is coming in for 7 and that the first card he blocks with will lose value, it's always frustrating to throw something in front of that. But it looks like he does value his life and wants to trade a few cards to keep his life high. Opting to block with a piece of armor here. Maybe keep the 3 cards in hand so he's got an effective play. And it looks like maybe a Warmonger's Diplomacy in hand.
I don't think... He never wants to play a Warmonger's against Charles, I don't think, right?
Well, it will prevent pumps before the axe.
That's true.
That's kind of it. It doesn't feel all that effective. So it may just be that it's a blue, and he wants to utilize that to fuel his turn. Thinking a lot about this block here.
Can we see this hand cam? I want to see what else is in there. We got Warmonger's Diplomacy, and he covers it right up.
Yeah. He says no.
Okay.
You cannot.
Okay, that's fine, Andrew. I respect you. I wonder, because he's deciding to throw the Apex Bonebreaker in here, that telegraphs to me that he has an attack that would really benefit from +1 damage, right? Oftentimes, you see this kind of a block from a Brute when they're about to throw a CNC, or a Send Packing, or something like that, that would normally not be a breakpoint, but becomes one.
Yeah.
And Andrew hearing exactly what I said and saying, you know what, you're right, Bryce, it's not worth it on this one.
Yeah, you would lose a lot of value if he opted to, because this is a temper equipment. If he decides to reduce its block down to 1 and then it goes down 1 more, it will break and he will lose a lot of value by blocking with that piece of equipment.
No doubt.
But he wants to, saying it's worth it, and he chooses the equipment. Andrew says, no problem. Taken 3.
Let's see if Andrew knows about this interaction yet.
Yeah. I wonder, I feel like if he was thinking about that, he would have chosen to block with his boots rather than his Bonebreaker, or his Apex Bonebreakers. But maybe just really valuing the might for some reason on this turn. I'm not exactly sure. It may have just been a little mistake.
It might also come down to that card that's in his arsenal and has been in his arsenal for a couple turns.
So here comes the Barraging Beatdown into an Show No Mercy, correct?
Yes, this card is absolutely insane in this situation.
Intimidate.
Because now if Charles Dunn does his game plan where he blocks with all the cards in his hand, then Show No Mercy will get pumped by an additional 3.
It'll go up to 9, whereas if he chooses to block with only 1, it will go up to 8 because of the Barraging Beatdown. So kind of a lose-lose situation here. Either 8 or 9, Charles gets to decide.
I've played against Andrew on this Rhinar deck before. It was like during my one armory where I went to Dromai, and there was a situation where he intimidated 3 cards out of my hand, went Show No Mercy, like with a Barraging Beatdown or something. And the question he presented me was, do you want to take 10 or take 10?
Yeah.
Because that last card in my hand was completely ineffectual.
Yeah.
And that's one of the crazy things that this Rhinar deck does.
So bringing the life totals to 19 apiece. Charles Dunn coming in with a blue felling swing, and the axe total damage 8.
Which is, nothing to shake your head at.
Nope.
8 damage is significant when your opponent is at 19 health.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about how long this game is going to go. These guys are showing us that, maybe that's not the case.
Yeah.
Charles Dunn probably realizing that the writing is on the wall in terms of the Intimidates coming his way.
Yeah.
And he's showing us that this Dory deck can still present damage.
Yeah, he needs to keep the life at parity. Can't just block out and hope to fatigue. So looking to maybe kill Andrew through damage or get him down to a point where he needs to block and Charles gains the tempo to end the game.
And that's where that Decimator Great Axe becomes such a problem because you can't block it efficiently.
Yep.
At a certain point, it's a hammer that is just making it so you have like 1 or 2 turns less to throw 1 card in front of it.
Yep. Andrew thinking about blocking with his boots. Puts him back, not sure yet how he wants to approach this.
And also, it's an interesting interaction because I don't believe if Andrew just blocks with equipment, then Charles cannot reduce it.
Right,
It was
he has to
because
block
he had
from
blocked
hand in order to activate that Decimator. So good choice there. Kind of getting as much value as he can. Taking 6, but keeping a 5-card hand. Oh, and pitching 2 reds to play a CNC. So that's a choice. Probably a pummel, if I had to guess. I didn't see.
Right, you are. There's a barraging beatdown and a pummel.
So a pretty obvious pummel here. We have a D-React and a Sigil.
Yes, indeed. So
Okay,
Charles Dunn is not going to be happy to see this pummel, I don't
He
think.
will have to just take it.
Oh, and it was a red barraging beatdown, so he needs the tunic counter to get there.
Right. Okay, an all-red hand, but utilizing his resources to the best of his ability, knowing that
Charles says, Rutro Raggy.
Yeah, taking some damage here. Probably going to play the Sigil and discard the D-React, if I had to guess.
Losing an E-Strike out of the Arsenal, which means that this next turn is just going to be Arsenal pass.
Yeah. Oh, decides instead to get rid of the Sigil.
I think that makes sense. Your
Yeah.
tunic is at 3. He's bound to get value.
Oh, it was a blue,
it was
so
a
he'd
blue
rather
shun.
just swing the axe.
Yeah. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Cosmic Octopus, how many Fable CNCs does Andrew Rudin have?
The answer is 3.
And the answer is more than is in that deck, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, wow. He's not just a point goblin, but a card goblin.
Indeed so.
A real treasure hoard that he sits upon of Fableds and, what are they called? Oh my gosh.
But, what?
You know, the Marvels.
Oh, yeah.
Marvels. Because it's a Marvel and it's a Fable. The CNC, it's quite a
Move
rare
over,
card.
Kyloria.
Yeah.
There's a new hoarder in town.
It sure is.
And here comes the axe.
Another 4.
Teammate Jonah Overholt looking over in anticipation. All the hopes of the Rhinar fans out there being hedged on the Marvel Hoarder.
Andrew thinking about, a nice use of the Oasis.
And Andrew getting that extra point of value because he's just a little bit under Charles.
Gaining the life. And now he says, swing big.
Swing big, not a bad point goblin card on its own, right?
Correct, you are.
2 cards for 8 is above rate. But that's why it comes with that caveat of if it's blocked out, then the opponent gets a quicken token.
We see Charles here given 2 cards, both of them block for 3. And gives up the helmet as well, it looks like.
We've talked about this in the past, right? Like the swing bigs have a tendency.
Nope, doesn't give the helmet, so just takes the
there it
2.
is.
Doesn't really seem to care that much about the quicken and would rather have the armor for the late game. Just another axe for 4.
Andrew drawing another one of his anti-fatigue cards in Remembrance. Although with the pace of this game so far, it doesn't really seem like fatigue will really be on the table. So I'm wondering if he's a little upset to see that Remembrance. Maybe he just wants one more shuffle of the deck.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I think that he's probably not worried about dying, so the Remembrance can get him a lot of those power cards back, and I imagine in this position he's probably pretty happy to shuffle some more Intimidate. I think that's his win condition. the alpha rampages, the pack hunts. So you can see he's palming the card right now, thinking about whether he wants to play it now or maybe do something a little sneakier as he considers his blocks.
Connor is so determined to stay awake here.
He's crushing it.
He's in Act 2 of Sleepy Connor, where he says, I will make it to the end of this matchup.
Well, we have 3 casters here today. You've been gracious enough to allow me a break, and then now Marcus getting a break. Connor's the only judge on site here today. He's had to rule every single call, every single possible moment where the players get confused or need some extra depth to their judgment.
I'm always confused, so I'm keeping him very busy.
You see Andrew Rudin saying, I want the Blood Rush. I want the best Intimidate card, the one that gives +2 Intimidate across the board. And he's got the double claws. Makes a lot of sense. Ignore what I said about those pack hunts. Those are small potatoes compared to the Blood Rush Bellow.
And we honestly, for running a rainbow set of them, we have not seen that many. I'm so sorry. He is. We haven't seen that many barraging beatdowns. Oh, no, he's not running the yellows.
Doesn't look like he has.
Just the reds and the blues.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
I mean, those are going to be clutch in closing out these games, right?
Absolutely.
Even in the non-intimidatey brutes.
There's the Alpha Rampage discarding a 6 double Intimidate. This is the kind of damage he's looking to push forward. 9 base on the Alpha Rampage, as well as intimidating 2 cards. So unless he's got a nice D-React in Arsenal, which is very possible, he's probably taking some damage here.
Andrew would love to have a barraging beatdown in front of this, of course, or I guess it wouldn't matter because he's got 2 cards in hand. So maybe he doesn't want to see that. What do I know? Charles Dunn, however, sporting, looks like 2-3 blocks. I don't think I saw a D-React.
Thinking about
but
something.
He is holding that shunt in Arsenal still.
Right,
so
counter up. he's I wonder why he's thinking so hard about this.
It must be based on the intimidated
Maybe he just
cards.
say, whatever, I'll take 3, keep that D-React, save it for an even rainier day, because he knows it can get worse than this. But no, it was a sink below, and he just blocked 6.
Wow, I feel like this man is transforming his Arsenal card.
Yeah.
Just to make us look bad.
He must have I know, right? He must have a pretty good turn on offense here if he's willing to keep 4 cards. See what he has planned. Maybe another felling swing and a couple blues. No, a cleave and a felling swing. I see now why he decided to keep that hand. That's a lot of damage. 4, 8, 12 on the axe coming in. Andrew Rudin only has 10 life to work with.
Charles is probably sitting there thinking, like, I've never been able to put together a turn this massive.
Just wants to see what it feels like to come in for 12 for the first time in his life.
Looks like it feels really good. He's got the fist bumps. He's making Andrew shuffle his cards. Let's check in on Sleepy Connor, please, Christine.
Okay.
Connor is not impressed at all.
Yeah, he's like, I see 12 pretty much every time I play Rhinar. Not sure why he's so excited. Looking him deep in his soul, trying to figure him out. The enigma that is Charles Dunn.
Oh my gosh, Charles even gets a smile out of Connor. This is a beautiful
Wow.
Game. This is a better love story than Twilight. Anyway, back to the game. We still have 12 on the combat chain. Andrew's still staring down that great axe like, it does what when I block?
Yep. Really just trying to figure out how to do this. I'm almost thinking he gives the whole hand. You got to preserve that life. And how often is it that Charles gets to put 12 damage together? I mean, can he really do this again?
Right, you are. I'm seeing a reckless swing in his hand. Do you think he's thinking about deploying that as well?
Probably not. Maybe because, I mean, he has to discard. So overall, it's going to, well, it won't block as much. I'll just put it that way.
The nice thing about playing the reckless swing is if you block with a card beforehand, it won't get reduced by the great axe, right?
True. Yeah. So that's a good point. Thinking about doing it like that, probably would have rather just seen 4-3 blocks.
100%. It's just one of those weird brute things, right? When you have the reckless swing in your hand, it's like, well, I can get 3 value out of this, or technically I'll get 5 or 6 value out of playing the reckless
Right, a
swing.
4 plus 2. 3 plus 3, yeah, 6 total.
If this was later in the game, if Charles was, say, like 5 points of health lower, he might Andrew might consider arsenaling the reckless swing because it's a really good win con against these fatigue decks, especially because he's already seen all 3 of those Sigil of Solaces.
Right. So he opts to do exactly that play. Blocks for 5 plus 4, total of 9, taking 3. And then dealing 2 to Charles. So
and Charles
really
says,
equal trade there.
Yep.
Andrew's slightly worse.
But he's got to be thinking that, like, there's no way that Charles can draw up that crazy of a hand again, right?
And
I see a felling swing.
So and it's a red too. Not what Andrew wants to see. Was really hoping for a swing 4 pass type of turn here.
Yeah.
Might just have to give the hand again. But knowing what his deck is capable of in terms of intimidates, he might just be looking to stall out until he gets the nuts.
Absolutely.
10 coming through.
Well, the nuts is definitely what Andrew needs when he's facing down 10 damage Great Axe swings every single turn.
Yeah. Is this his last red felling swing?
That's a great question.
Maybe
he's
second.
He's running the blues, so it's really hard for me to know.
Yeah, I think it maybe is his second or third. So starting to run out of the offensive gas. Of course, the cleaves in the deck are pretty strong when you can pair them with the tunic counter.
100%. And I think a lot of these fatigue decks really hinge on those tunic counters, right? How do I eke every little bit of value out of this thing that is going to be sitting here for the entire game?
So opts to throw the flesh bag in front of this, blocking 2, 3, 4, 5 probably total here. Wow. Really
5.
Taking himself down to 2 life. Risky territory.
Really scary, too, because if Charles had another blue in his hand, he could have popped the refraction bolters there, swung with the Great Axe. Then Andrew has to give 2 cards.
Ooh, Blood Rush Bellow turn. Discarding a red. 2 float. Oh, yeah, still has the tunic counter. Interesting choice.
So he's got the claw here.
Yeah.
He's probably hoping just for claw. Big attack.
Oh, another Blood Rush.
Blood Rush is...
Maybe, do you just play it and pray? It's a tough spot.
I don't know, man. This is never a spot you want to be in.
No, he does have the tunic counter, which helps a little bit, but he really, if he plays this, he needs to see blues.
The thing that is going in Rhinar's favor here is that he gets an Intimidate out of it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All of the other brutes,
I mean, this could be huge, but he needs the resources. 2 reds, and one of them's an Oasis. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's a yellow. It's a Is that a Sen?
Rawhide Rumble.
Rawhide Rumble. Okay, that is a red.
Yeah, that's probably
not what he wants to
red.
see. He's going to claw for... Oh, no, just send it.
And unfortunately, it's just going to be for 10. No Intimidate because he has not beaten his chest.
Right, and he cannot do that with the card in his hand, which is an Oasis Respite. So
those see, this is exactly why the second Blood Rush is so much more lackluster, right?
Yeah.
Because the nice thing about the first Blood Rush is you pitch a blue, you discard the last card in your hand, you're going into the Blood Rush turn with a free claw swing.
Yeah.
Right? If you have to go back into the tank, playing another Blood Rush, chances are you're going to get gummed up. And the upside is just not that much better.
So the card in his hand is a red, which means he does not have the resources to do any... Well, he could do 1 claw, but not 2.
Yeah, he would not have been able to do... Wait a minute.
Yeah, no, because he had, I think, 1 floating after
he had 1 floating after the second
and then he had to use his tunic counter just to play that. So he has the ability to arsenal this Oasis Respite, and that's probably the best he can do.
So Andrew doing what he can with what he's got.
Yeah, I think the chat might be asking why didn't he just pitch the Blood Rush?
Oh, I see.
In hindsight, maybe the better play. Maybe he was just thinking, what if I hit 2 blues?
Folks, you don't know until you know.
This is brute gameplay right here. We got to risk it to get the biscuit.
You know what? I think he should have rolled scabs on top of it.
That's a good
point. As a
point.
matter of fact.
Yep, just at the end, just to kind of rub it in Charles Dunn's face.
Ew.
Oh, he's got the balance and the hold the line. Just covers the whole thing up. Doesn't even care. And
No,
there's his third. There's his third blood rush. Doesn't have the life really to support this. As Charles is going to come back with
not.
4 cards from hand. One of them is a what's the sharpened steel.
Sharpened steel.
Sharpened steel.
What does sharpened steel do?
That gives +3 to your first weapon attack, or your
boy.
next, I should say.
I got something stuck in my braces.
Oh no. We'll get the floss from the back.
You know who doesn't have anything stuck in his metal? It's Charles Dunn.
Yep.
His is sharpened and ready to go.
Deciding how to pitch, or whether or not to just go ahead and swing that for 7. Is that a standing order and a?
It is a standing order. I don't know what the other card was.
So
if it's a blah, then he gets to pop refraction bolters if Andrew decides to live by exactly 1.
Yeah, Andrew, not in a good spot now.
No, this is not where you want to be.
This is the point of the game where you really wish you could keep your 5 cards and you just can't.
Yeah. I wonder if there's merit to just kind of like trying to, I don't know, not fatigue Charles exactly, but just block out these damage turns coming from Charles, because he just doesn't have that many of them in the deck.
Yeah.
You know? Eventually the tide has to turn and he has to just go, here's an X. At which point maybe Andrew can pivot and swing some tempo.
Yeah. Yeah, he really needed that last turn to be better than it was. And now he's in a pickle. Really putting a lot of thought into this turn. 4 cards, each of them would have been great with a blood rush.
Yeah, totally.
You just can't do it.
I mean, this is the point in the game where you need to spend the time. Connor is mad dogging this camera.
I think he's staring at you, chat. Stop arguing.
Here comes the 6 block, one of which is blood rush. Make that 9.
Yep.
It's going to get reduced down to 8.
Giving up the 9, probably just going to try to
That's
chip
a
little
fatal. Bit. That's a fatal engagement in Charles' hand.
Oh wow!
He doesn't have enough resources to play it. But if Andrew had let this hit for 1, then refraction bolters could have been popped, and Charles could have swung with another axe. Now he's got a little bit of an awkward situation here.
Just takes the IP penalty.
And honestly, he's fine.
Yeah.
Because of it. Because Rhinar.
No big deal.
Rhinar with 1 card in hand, 1 in arsenal is not that scary.
Just a claw. Little 3 damage.
A claw.
Charles most likely just going to block this out and come back with another 4 card hand.
He's also got a shunt in hand, so he might as well take an opportunity to sneak 1 damage in on Andrew. Charles says, or Warriors say, we can do the reckless thing, but just a little bit slower.
Yep.
Reckless swing thing, that is.
I'm not seeing very clearly Charles Dunn's hand, but he just wants to see like a good offensive card every single turn, something to strip multiple cards from Andrew's hand. Guaranteed to take 2.
Exactly, which is the really scary thing about Axe that we were talking about at the beginning of the game, right? Like a lot of these warrior weapons, like Great Axe, Hot Streak, for example, they really come to a head. Like their value is shown in the late stages of the game.
Yikes! Shunt taking 1.
Big owie.
Andrew really wants to see how many copies of Dig Up Dinner. He's running 2, so he would love to see one of those coming up right now.
Looks like not. He is seeing a red barraging beatdown, which is a card he needs to close out this game. Let's see if he can hold on to it. See, 1 more felling swing in Charles Dunn's hand.
Yeah. Standing
But
order
he elects
for
a standing
4?
order.
Huh. That's a decision. Maybe just saying I need to clear this arsenal out.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Huh.
Tunic.
He could get away with a 1 card block here. This could.
Yeah, this gives Andrew like
some breathing room, right?
An interesting amount of room. Charles doesn't have another shunt in hand, does he?
It's possible. No, I think actually he does. Maybe that's the point.
If he does, that's probably the point.
He just says doesn't matter. Clear the arsenal. Throw it in. Game's over.
Oh, Blasmafet's right. It's a gotcha for the fatal engagement.
Oh, right. Yes, that's right. You mentioned the fatal engagement, which applies to attack actions.
Right, you are.
Something that only chat is smart enough to remember.
Dude, it's so... But Andrew shows the gotcha.
Oh!
Andrew's
What a
getting the
good
got
play.
him.
I don't know if he knows what he just did, but he saved the game using that Oasis rather than using a card and the tunic. Very, very
Oh my goodness.
smart.
And Charles goes for Fatal in the Arsenal. I don't know about the rest of you folks, but I have done this in limited, in heavy hitters, and been punished immensely for it.
Okay.
Let's see if Andrew can put something together. Show no mercy is a great way to do it.
2 Intimidate. So this is that question again. Do you want to give this +3 or +4?
Yep.
Your choice. Coming in for 10 at the moment. Maybe 9 if he gives 1 card to block.
Very exciting.
Fatal Engagement in Arsenal means it's not a D-React. So he doesn't have the same kind of power to block this out that he normally would.
No, indeed. Maybe Andrew's thinking that that card in Arsenal is a shunt as well.
Yes.
So
probably the reason he played that Oasis.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Had Charles not been threatening that, he could have actually gotten the win. The 1 life sort of saving Andrew Rudin.
This turned into a magnificent game.
Yeah. Very good clapback turn here. The 4 card 10 Intimidate twice.
And Charles potentially having to give up. Are those 2 felling swings in his hand?
I see 1 for sure.
What's that other card?
Felling and yeah, they're both fellings.
So these have got to be some of the last fellings in his hand, which are the biggest.
1 blue, 1 red. So I know he's played 2 blue at least and 2 red. I think I mentioned earlier. So he probably runs a Remembrance, I would imagine.
This really reduces his damage potential.
1
But,
yeah.
you know, this is not a bad hand
Sharpen
in its
steel,
own.
5-2, and Andrew just keeps getting put in this spot of like, and we know about the Fatal Engagement. Does he have the resources to play it? No, he does not.
Andrew really wishing that he had intimidated not the Heart of Fiendal out of Charles's hand last turn. That would have been really sweet because that would have been another non-blocking card stuck in his hand.
Phenomenal.
It also would have meant that Barraging Beatdown would not have been turned off because he wouldn't have been able to block with that other card from
Andrew's got the Reckless Swing in hand, maybe thinking about tucking that away in Arsenal, hoping to get Charles Dunn down to 2.
Wait, go back there, please, Christine. Connor looking like the Tower of Pisa here.
Oh, wow.
He's shaking.
I was thinking the Statue of David.
Interesting. I think the Statue of David is a little more stable.
Okay.
Connor looks like a very end-stage Jenga game to me at the moment.
Right.
About to topple at any moment.
Yeah, he's rocking back and forth.
I'm rooting for him, man. You got it. 1 more game, Connor. You can do this.
Did he do an all-night sleepover last night?
No, because if he had, I definitely would have been invited, okay?
The fact that I wasn't made me think that maybe it did happen.
You're always invited to sleepovers, man.
No, I am not. But thank you for saying
It's implicit. You have the best pillows.
That is true, actually. I'm surprised you know that.
Right you are, Kiwi Stalker. It is not Connor's fault. And it's also not Connor's fault that Charles Dunn seems to make it to our top 8s pretty much every AGE.
I think he
left
heard
the
us.
table.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Connor.
We
fighting
love you,
for
Connor.
You're fighting for us, and we're fighting for you. Andrew Rudin looking through his graveyard. I'm sorry, through Charles' graveyard. Figuring out what kind of threats he has left, whether he's got those dreaded shunts that deal 1 damage if you attack with a weapon.
I mean, Andrew this Great Axe is so impossible to block out efficiently. Is that another Reckless in his hand?
It is. I think he might want to tuck that in Arsenal and give 3 cards here. This is we were sort of talking about this. And I bet what Andrew was looking for was how many felling swings, how many sharpened steels, how many offensive cards have we seen? He would love nothing more than for Charles Dunn to draw a hand of a bunch of D-reacts and no pumps.
Yeah, 100%. And it's got to be getting close there because I believe this is the 3rd sharpened steel, if I'm not mistaken.
I think
we
so,
saw
too.
2 felling
so
swings
he should be out of all the pumps at this point.
But once again,
except for cleaves, he has 2 cleaves left.
Once again, we have to look down at Charles's feet. His refraction bolters are always there, always threatening activation.
That's true.
And they equate to another axe swing, which is just 2 of them. 1 is difficult, 2 is near impossible.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, is that
Pac-Man?
another? That wasn't another reckless swing in Andrew's
No,
hand,
I
was
think
it?
that's a blue Wrecker Romp.
No, at the back of
At
his
the
hand.
back? It looks red to me.
Okay.
It's hard to see. I can't believe my eyes are capable of that tiny pixel.
Oh, no. And Charles finds another offensive
there's the
piece
cleave.
here. Here's
Yep.
the cleave.
That was... Oh, and look at how many resources he's floating.
Ruh-roh raggy.
This is bad news for Andrew. I don't... Unless he gives the whole hand... He might even still be dead.
Yeah.
It's a red fatal engagement?
I think it's a blue,
Oh, okay.
actually. So
Let me
it's
take
only
a
going to come
look
in for
at
over
this
3, but that is going
Yep.
to be too much for Andrew, I think.
Yep. He has 3 blue fatal engagements, so that's a 3 damage attack
It's 3,
reaction.
yeah.
So potentially 11, but Andrew's going to need to think long and hard about how many blocks he puts in front of this, possibly staring down lethal +3.
So Andrew would be able to block it out entirely with his whole hand.
Yeah.
But
Knowing
he's
the way
got
that
an agile
he's-
wind-up in there.
Oh, yeah. Knowing the way he's been playing so far, I would be shocked if he, out of the blue, decided to overblock this one by 3. So he's in for the decision of his life, or at least of the week. I don't know what kinds of decisions he's had to make in his life. Hopefully some slightly more difficult than this, or not. That would be a cushy life, wouldn't it?
Andrew is a Cold War wargamer, so I kind of doubt it.
And he gives 3, exactly 8, and he has 2 life, which means
To the death. But
he has
holding onto a reckless swing!
a reckless swing, and he lives. I completely
Andrew
forgot about that. I
lives.
shouldn't have.
Yeah.
That was silly
But it
of
was
me.
way more exciting than
Wasn't
you
it?
did, wasn't it?
Oh, wow.
Sometimes amnesia really helps you out.
Yep. Makes for a very exciting cast.
100%. Charles Dunn finding his last-ditch effort once again.
Can we see the size of that deck? Andrew Rudin making it look like he has very few cards left. Ooh,
That's not a lot of
that's
cards.
what fatigue looks like, my friends.
Now let's see Charles.
And I'm not talking about Connor this time.
Charles is low, but not as low. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes the big owie. Andrew's able to block it out, but at what cost? Have we seen him block with the second?
4 cards in deck. This looks like it. Andrew tried everything he could.
Surely Charles draws 4 reds.
Uh-huh.
Oh, Andy has... Oh, he placed the driving blade. Just give it go again
Yep.
anyway.
Wow. And this is going to be all she wrote as Andrew gives up 2 of the last 4 cards in his deck. 50% of his deck to that axe.
Surely it's the little pack hunt that could.
And 2 cards, Pack Hunt, Intimidate. His only shot here is to pull his only blocking card out of hand. I don't think that that was...
No,
Awesome,
we're not.
and
We're
here
not
it
back to
is.
the heart again.
Yep. And that will be all she wrote as Andrew is out of cards, will not be able to block the coming axe swing. Well played, Charles Dunn taking it. Moving on to the finals. It sounds like Chris Aioli did not make it through that Kano, so we've got what I think is a very great match for the Kano.
Oh my goodness.
We'll see what Charles Dunn has in store for the Wizard, but this is probably not what he was hoping to see in the finals.
Definitely feels like the gem gods have aligned for the Kano player.
Yes.
I believe not but last weekend or 2 weekends ago during the end of ProQuest season, Alexander Vore hit Charles Dunn with a Sec Kano and had like 10 cards in his pitch zone.
Yep, that
Hit him
sounds
for
about
125
right.
or something like that.
10 actually sounds kind of low.
Yeah, yeah.
So
well,
maybe Alex was going easy on him.
maybe he was. We'll see what our friend Eric has in store
Yes.
for the Dunster.
Absolutely.
Will Charles Dunn be done, or will the Kano be undone?
The top 8 is what? Updated top 8, everybody. Eric, do you want to do it?
Daurenheim.
Dauernheim. Eric Dauernheim versus Charles Dunn. Kano versus Dorinthea. As most of us know, this is usually Kano favored unless Charles has some really sick stuff. He does have the Oasis that can help, you know, if maybe Eric slips a little bit. But if he decides to pitch stack, then what we're about to see is a lot of blocking and then a giant spirit bomb at the end. You remember that one? Dragon Ball Z. You ever watch that?
Yeah.
Charging up the soul. He's going to need your power, folks, as he steals the soul from everyone on planet Earth and drops it in a giant blue flaming ball of destruction.
Are you
Soon
telling
to
me
see.
this next game is going to take 3 episodes to conclude?
At least.
You heard it here, folks. Don't go anywhere. We got Spirit Bombs and Kano Bombs coming at you.